So let's shift into taking a deep dive into project economics for really all microgrid and energy storage systems. But specifically, we sit in this time of divine alignment. We're looking at the tax credits, grants, and rebates being combined with the already very strong economic performance of solar and energy storage systems, which have been, financially successful for well over 30 years, but have really become successful over the last 10 years. And so, in this very special time for agrivoltaic storage systems, we have the opportunity to integrate an abundance of grants, credits, and rebates to take this very strong sector and absolutely turbocharge it. And while there is an abundance of tax credits, grants, and rebates at the federal, state, and local level, we're going to focus on just using the big three, how we can discount agrivoltaic storage systems 60 to 80%. And it should be noted that every project has its own specific pro forma and also sits geographically and with its own state and county. So we need to have a very clear plan to make sure that we can realize all economic benefits and that it's going to be financially successful. And with tax credits, grants, and rebates, that way they have the appropriate level of planning to make sure that we can realize these at the project level. But as far as the big three go, we have the solar investment tax credit, which is 30%. And to highlight that this is a tax credit which reduces overall tax liability versus a deduction which reduces the amount of taxable income. And the solar investment tax credit is also very flexible. And the 30% creates a very large tax credit. So that can be taken at the project level if there's the sufficient tax liability. And some of this can be carried forward for several years. But if there isn't the tax appetite at the project level, there can also be, for example, an investment group that a portion or all of the tax credit can be passed for. And if by chance there isn't enough liability at the project level or an investment group, there's something called tax equity, where businesses and organizations are looking to purchase renewable energy tax credits so it can be realized in the project economically through tax equity. And then we have REAP, which is a USDA grant program. And this is up to 40% of total project cost that comes as a cash rebate at project completion. Many projects can come into their first phase of completion year one. So along with a very powerful tax credit, we can get an infusion of a large amount of cash into the project. And then we also have depreciation. Depreciation is going to be specific, certainly to the project, and the equipment that goes in, along with the combined federal and tax rates of the project. But here we're using a realistic 10%. So just combining these big three, not including any of the many more federal, state, and local programs that many agrivoltaic system projects can achieve, we're at an 80% off of total system cost. So let's take a deeper dive at the REAP program. And this is one of the most fantastic programs from the USDA. It's called Renewable Energy for America. And its intention is to promote energy efficiency and renewable energy development for agricultural producers and rural small businesses through grants and loan guarantees. In this transmission, we're specifically focusing on the grant, but it's important to note that they also have a very strong financing program that will go up to 75% of a project cost and can be used in combination with the grant. So who's eligible? All agricultural producers, whether in rural or non-rural areas, are REAP eligible. And an agricultural producer is defined as at least 50% of gross income coming from agricultural operations. So this is, of course, crops and livestock and grazing, but also includes processing, distribution, or creating value-added products. And additionally, small businesses and rural electric cooperatives in eligible rural areas are REAP eligible. And these are areas with populations of less than 50,000 residents. And the easiest way to determine is just go to the link here or go to the USDA REAP website. You put in the project address and it will show whether or not it's REAP eligible. But to really expand, These non-farming businesses is very broad. So this can be stores, automotive shops, mills, manufacturing, hotels, etc., as long as they are in a USDA defined rural area. And looking at the history of the REAP project, since 2008 to 2022, it has funded hundreds of millions of dollars in REAP grants to projects across the United States. And we can see back through the history that there were big peaks. Over $75 million were awarded in 2010 and over $70 million in 2015. And in 2022, REAP grants and loans funded 844 projects across 46 states. And this was for a wide range of renewable energy systems. Here you can see that solar is by far the major category, then energy efficiency, and then we have biomass, wind, geothermal, and some others. And that those were also different project sizes. The grants and loan recipients were from 16,000 all the way up to 25 million. And there's some links down here below on all of the projects that were funded from USDA in 2022 and some of the updates on the REAP program. So let's take a look at the guidelines. And so while this has been a very powerful program in the past, under the Inflation Reduction Act, it increased the grant amount and made it more accessible to a wider range of businesses, taking a phenomenal program and turn it into something that is absolutely transformational. And it should also be noted that the REAP program is funded annually with a specific budget, and projects are chosen through a competitive grant process. So another huge benefit of agrivoltaic systems is they bring such a huge spectrum of benefits that can make them more competitive in actually winning a REAP grant in any given year. So looking at the guidelines, maximum grant up to 40% of the project's eligible costs in two categories, up to a $500,000 maximum grant for energy efficiency and $1 million maximum grant for renewable energy projects. It's also important to note that the grant is taxable. So you need to plan that there's going to be income in the project. Projects greater than 200,000 require a technical report, and energy efficiency projects require an energy audit or assessment. So looking at these two eligible categories, the $1 million maximum grant is really any type of renewable energy generation. This is small and large solar, small and large wind, hydropower below 30 megawatts, which is a very sizable hydropower system, biomass, biodiesel, ethanol, geothermal, anaerobic digesters or solid fuels, and even ocean, tidal current, and thermal generation. So you take $1 million on renewable energy generation that can then be combined with $500,000 for energy efficiency improvements. And most, I would say almost all farms and ranches have old, aged equipment that either needs to be updated or repaired to make it more efficient. And this is, again, a very broad category that includes building envelope, lighting, insulation, HVAC, irrigation, water heating, power systems, refrigeration, drying and curing, fans and blowers, compressors and pumps. So we can get $1 million to put in new renewable energy generation that accesses the available energy in the land, the indigenous energy, how much sun is there, the wind, the water that is flowing, the soil, and the geothermal power coming from the earth. And then another $500,000 to make the entire ranch facility and its water, soil systems more efficient. So the ability to have $1.5 million in a combined grant that can come back year one is absolutely transformational. And we have a link here to the REAP website, along with some specific success stories. One is an alfalfa operation. There's also a lumber mill and a horticulture. So let's actually look at a project example where putting in an agrivoltaic storage system on a cattle ranch in southern Utah. And here we want to bring this holistic perspective where we're going to look at the power grid, the ag grid, the hydro grid, the soil grid, and the transportation, adding an electric vehicle fleet and a charging network for the ranch fleet, but also a public EV charging system, and how this combination ignites the fuse of economic energetic, and environmental transformation into a more regenerative future. So in this project example, this is a project that we've been developing and working with the property owners. And the property is 165 acres. And on that 165 acres, there's 110 acres of existing pasture. The farm or the ranch facility sits on 10 acres. And in a really amazing way, they have a 3-acre portion of the parcel that sits right on Scenic Highway 12. And this is in southern Utah. This Scenic Byway 12 runs right through the Mighty Five of Bryce and Zions, the beautiful national monuments of southern Utah, that receives 2.5 million visitors through the over the year. And then we also have 40 acres of forest and riparian area that's surrounding the pastures. So let's look at the power grid. In this, we're wanting to create a utility scale operation and a microgrid for the facility. The utility scale is going to be what's called a qualifying facility, and it's designed for an optimal generation power purchase agreement, selling this power to the grid. And we're going to put in 2 megawatts of solar generation, also putting in grid energy storage of a 5 megawatt hour with 1 megawatt power capacity. And then in the microgrid, we're going to divide it for optimal distributed generation, energy storage, the farm electric vehicle fleet, EV charging, and also for local resiliency. And that microgrid is going to be 100 kilowatts. The 6 vehicle electric ranch fleet is going to provide another 750 kilowatt hours of energy storage that can be used in vehicle to grid operation. And we're also putting in a biomass generator that's 50 kilowatts inside, which provides power to the utility scale grid operation, but also produces heat and biochar that takes waste from the ag operation and from cleaning the local forests and turns that into a beautiful soil amendment to really augment and turbocharge the entire agricultural operation, and also creates an amendment that can be sold to other farms and ranches in the area. So in this utility scale microgrid, we're going to use a combination of dual access solar trackers and bifacial solar fence to take their existing rotational grazing operation to create paddocks. And this is just an overview of one of the paddocks with the dual access solar trackers and the fence. And these paddocks are each 700 feet long by 200 feet wide, 140,000 square feet. So of the total 110 acres, we're creating a solar pasture or solar field of 20 acres with 2 megawatts. 1.5 megawatts of that's going to be dual access tracking, bifacial solar system. 500 kilowatts is going to be bifacial solar fence. And here, there's a lot of numbers and information, but you can see some of the generation that will come from this combination. And also, as we've been designing these systems, it's interesting when you start designing pastures with single or dual access tracking and bifacial solar fence that a beautiful relationship emerges. And so we can see here that 75% of the utility scale system is from solar trackers and 25% is coming from the bifacial solar fence. And then we have the grid level energy storage positioned down near the ranch facility. So here's a look at the facility microgrid where we're putting in the 100 kilowatts of building integrated PV, solar PVT thermal, the electric vehicle fleet with an EV charging network that is both to charge the ranch's electric vehicles, but also for guests, for residents who come to the ranch, and also the biomass gasifier. And one thing to really highlight here with building integrated PV is really to shift away from the default thinking that we're going to put all the solar on the roof. You can see here that we've really put it as solar awnings, covered parking, and specifically with their cattle operation, there's an intention to want to create some of the covered the corrals to have covered space because the cattle, particularly when they're birthing with small calves, or sit in this corral. And so to create some wonderful shade for the critters for any time that they're in the corral. And that by doing so, not only do we create usable space, but we've actually increased the asset value of the property versus just putting on the roof, because covered parking, covered corrals, and awnings on the homes and the barns and the workshops is really increasing the asset value because we've created more usable space. So zooming out of the power, let's look at the ag, soil, and hydro grid. In the ag grid, we want to design the system so it can be integrated with, of course, the existing cattle operation, but by putting in the bifacial solar fence, it opens up the possibility for multi-species animal rotational grazing. And that could be sheep or pigs. And then we're always looking at how we can improve this for pollinators. And then for the plants, this is currently grass and hay for the cattle, but also how we can have flowers and native species to support the pollinators, and how this is all interacting with the forest, the benefits to the soil grid. And then in the hydro grid, integrating precision water irrigation and storage systems through increasing the amount within the soil system, and how this can also complement watershed restoration. And then we have the biomass generator that's taking waste from the forest and from the ag operation and turning that into power, heat, and can also create air to water generation, along with biochar that turbocharges the entire ag operation and helps improve the soil health. So looking at this 20-acre field with the precision irrigation and agrivoltaic system, and just highlighting how we can use the superstructure of the dual access tracking systems and the bifacial solar fencing to be able to create a much more efficient irrigation system versus the existing irrigation system at the ranch, but also how we're getting that powerful combination that anytime we're irrigating the fields, we can be cleaning the solar panels, increasing that system's performance by keeping them clean. And anytime we want to clean the solar panels, all of that excess water is then falling in to irrigate the crops. So this is the 6 vehicle electric vehicle fleet, and in this we're adding a delivery van, a heavy duty pickup truck, light to mid-size pickup truck, a large electric tractor, a mid-size tractor, and an electric UTV. The total for that is $305,000, and we're using just current general prices in 2023. Many of these vehicles qualify for a federal tax credit, which totals $37,000, bringing that net cost year one down to $267,000. And all of these electric vehicles are just big batteries. And the total for that is 750 kilowatt hours that we can utilize as part of the utility scale microgrid in a vehicle to grid operation using their extra capacity. And then we have some of the rough economics of looking at the gas or diesel equivalent of a lot of these operating, that in this model would be a $21,000 reduction in fuel expenses. And over 5 years, that'd be $105,000, bringing the net cost on the electric vehicle fleet to $161,000. So let's sum all of this up into the project example. The project capital investment is $3.5 million to put in 2 megawatts of solar, 5 megawatt hour utility energy storage with a 1 megawatt power capacity, a 50 kilowatt biomass gasifier, and a precision irrigation solar panel cleaning system. In the microgrid, we're creating 100 kilowatts of building integrated PV and solar PVT for thermal operations, along with a public EV charging system. So at the utility scale, dual access tracking and solar fence, and you can see that this cost falls into the renewable energy generation side of the REAP grant and qualifies for the federal investment tax credit of 30%. The hydro system of integrated precision irrigation and dual benefit solar cleaning system goes into the energy efficiency project of REAP. The energy storage goes into the renewable energy grant. And then you got the biomass gasifier, which goes into renewable energy generation. The microgrid with building integrated PV, part of it goes into the renewable energy generation. and then the HVAC heating, and then doing some rehab and renovation to improve building envelopes, putting in new doors and windows, and creating the buildings and ranch facilities to be more efficient goes into the energy efficiency project. Putting in public EV charging along with the EV charging within the facility, and then the EV fleet with the 750 kilowatt hours of energy storage. So year one, 3.5 million capital invested. Total REAP grants is $1.23 million. So to have year one, $1.23 million in cash come back into a project of this side is a huge economic benefit that brings a lot of flexibility and really decreases the risk of the project. There's a $742,000 from the federal ITC tax credit. And then the depreciation is $511,000 because you get an 80% bonus depreciation year one in 2023. And we're arriving at this by using a combined total tax rate of 30%, 25% federal, and 5% state. And then the rest of the depreciation is realized over the next 2 to 5 years. So we can see in year one on a $3.5 million project that we're at 28 or 72% reduction year one, that by year five goes to 78%. So for a project of this scale, it's just incredible how we really sit in this time of divine alignment of strong economics, grants, rebates, and tax credits. So let's look at a smaller microgrid example. Here we're going to look at $750,000 to create a 450 kilowatt solar utility scale system, energy storage of 500 kilowatts with 100 kilowatt power capacity, precision irrigation solar panel cleaning system, as well as a public EV charging system, and another microgrid of 100 kilowatts with PVT. And here we're only going to use 3 vehicles, which provide 370 kilowatts of energy storage. So going through the same metrics, all the same categories, we can see how it comes onto line that year one, $750,000 of capital invested, $184,000 coming through the REAP grant rebate, $129,000 in federal investment tax credit. The accelerated the depreciation in year one is $72,000. And by the remaining of that coming over the next 2 to 5 years. So year one, we're at a 53% reduction in project cost that goes to 58% reduction by year five. So just again, reviewing, if we look back at the inflation adjusted net farm income of farms and ranches, the integration of agrivoltaic storage systems can increase the income, decrease the expenses, and increase the net income. And why this very special time that we're in creates the opportunity for agrivoltaic storage systems to be the greatest investment opportunity of all time. Thank you for taking the time to view this section of the United States Agrivoltaic Energy Storage and EV Microgrid Market Intelligence Analysis. Really deeply hope that you've found this really valuable and hopefully inspiring. And if you're not watching the entire section on butterflypower.org, really encourage you to come and see all sections to get the totality of this amazing opportunity. And regardless of what channel you're finding this transmission, would be deeply appreciated if you give it some love, give it a like, and share it with a farmer or a rancher or anyone who's interested in participating in the regenerative transformation our economy, our energy sector, and our environment. Any investors who are looking at an amazing opportunity to transform their capital into the regenerative future. And it's just a deep honor and blessing to be here in this time and to participate in this great work. And we are the butterfly generation. It's time to rise and shine. Time to transform and fly.